Hey everyone, you are listening to the Self-Awareness Journey podcast. This little banter is about a car ride long and features your hosts, JJ Parker and Melissa Albers. JJ owns a tech company and Melissa has been a coach working with influencers for the last 18 years. Yep.
Okay. Recording.
Wait a minute. Hang on a minute.
The killer mosquito inside
No,
the car.
it was a horsefly. It was a horsefly.
Swatting things.
All right. So today's conversation is about energy. JJ and I had an experience earlier this week that prompted this conversation. And I think it's really a common experience that many, many people have. And it really is all about where do you get your own personal energy from? When does your energy get drained? And how do you recover and go back and forth, recovering and feeling energized throughout the day?
Yeah, totally. And I'd say as it applies to self-awareness, just like our conversation is about understanding and sensing that energy shift in you,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then figuring out what you're going to do about it,
Yeah.
right? So, earlier this week, we were recording one of our video lessons.
Yes.
And we do that at my office, mostly because no one is ever there.
Right. Due to COVID. Not
big,
due to poor performance. This is
Right.
simply because of COVID.
So we've turned my office into the Self-Awareness Journey Studios, and we've been recording video there. And so we do those during the day, right? And we both work, full time. So
lots of big jobs.
I was working all morning, and Melissa rolls into the studio, and we start talking about the podcast, and you go, JJ, you look tired.
And you did look tired. Your eyes were red, and you were trying to really rally. You were really working hard to rally and be excited about the conversation, but I could just, your physical energy was not present like it usually is.
Well, yeah, I mean, I had a really hectic morning. We've had a lot going on.
Right.
And I think what I remember saying to you is like, no, I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm not tired.
Yeah. No, it's
right?
fine. It's fine.
I'm fine.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't, but then that was, of course, in a moment of self-awareness, I was like, oh, wait, I should pause here for a second and actually
take my inventory.
Input and actually see, oh yeah, actually, I am pretty mentally drained here, right?
Mm-hmm. And I think all of us do that.
Anyway, right?
Yeah, but I think that's so common. Like we talk about it more now than we ever have, just the energy behind something. Yep. And when we have done previous work before, people don't recognize how much their energy comes across when they're talking with other people. If they're recording themselves, if they're videotaping themselves, you can feel a person's energy before you even hear their words.
Yeah, I like to think that I can hide that.
Yeah, we all do. Yeah, we all do.
And actually even in that lesson, we talked about personal focus, and we talked about, kind of how we act different based on, the different, people we're around, environmental inputs and jobs and things we're involved in. And the fact is like, it's hard to mask that stuff. And just like you said, masking what your true energy is nearly impossible.
Well, it's actually what it is draining.
Yeah.
You may on the outside, this isn't having to do with anybody's skills. Like, this isn't if you're good at your job, right? This isn't like if you're a high quality this or an expert that. This is really about how much energy it takes you to be that. And I think for me, really noticing what I'm naturally aligned with and what things or what people are much harder for me to align with. Noticing those things makes a huge difference for me on my energy level.
Yeah, and probably, as we talk now, reflecting on my morning, I was in a whole bunch of meetings with a bunch of people, a lot of talking, a lot of detail work, which, a lot of those situations just take a lot of energy from me.
Yeah, well, and particularly the one that was ending just before you and I were doing our recording was an hour-long conversation with a person, right?
I was on a live webinar with a whole bunch of people.
You were hosting a live webinar.
Oh, yeah. Oh, the other topics at some point we need to talk about is like work amnesia.
Yes.
Both you and I completely forget about things we did in the very recent past. Like
as in 10 minutes ago. Well, and in this particular case,
that was right. So for me and my personality type, that's a really big energy spend for me. I have to spend a lot of energy to kind of be on that way.
There's another something that's a little in the background a bit that you maybe didn't even notice, but I know about you, which is in that experience while you were hosting that webinar, there was a particular individual that was being really negative for the entire podcast or for the entire webinar.
It was annoying the crap out of me the entire time.
And you are not that way. So like, especially if you're going to present with people, you make a really concerted effort to be optimistic and approachable. And I mean, it takes a lot of your energy cycles, but that's very important for you to do that. So whenever you're in group settings like that, you push that out really prevalently. And this individual was having zero awareness of how he was pushing his energy out. And by the end of the hour, you were ready to lose it. And
I was a little sideways, wasn't I?
Yes. And you went right from that to, okay, let's sit down and be really connected and let's talk about personal focus.
Well, so then we did, right? So we did, I got it together. We reoriented, and what happened is we sat in our two black chairs and turned the camera on, and then everything that morning is probably why I can't even remember it. Yeah, just like faded away. It like all instantly went away, right?
Yeah,
because I was right back into my zone. Into the zone, like back into my more authentic state, back into a flow.
Yeah.
And it was a whole different energy. And
I remember commenting to you actually after that session because you were like back to your old self. And you were like bouncing around and doing all the technical stuff and checking everything, for our recording. And I said to you, wow, do you notice how your energy is just completely more buoyant? It's like you're just happier and you seem really energized because you're doing something that's pleasing to you. What you just did in the last hour, and I remember using that word to you, is pleasing. It's like you were focusing on something that you found pleasing and it was very easy for you to do it, even when you were coming at it from a deficit. I just think that's really an interesting thing for people to think about is when you're coming in and out of things, we all have jobs to do. We all have responsibilities to do. Yet there's very deep fundamental things that are easier for us to attach to energetically. And to take your own inventory, I think is kind of a really important thing to do because it allows you to stay more in your centered, focused state, even just having an awareness about what's happening for you.
Yeah, it sounds kind of like hippy dippy, like, hey, check your energy. Like, what's your energy like? But I think it's a really fundamental thing.
Yeah, I do too. And I think the other thing is, how we've been saying in the last few weeks a lot in our self-awareness journey, and as we've been creating some of the content we've been creating right now, we're also very much talking about it's easier to observe other people than it is ourselves. Yep. And noticing how other people affect energy for yourself is also really important.
Yeah, well, I say if in the realm of noticing other people, like what I often do is, it's like you said, it's harder to even maybe sense how it affects you. But if you ever watch somebody walk into a room, no, so like as an introvert who's constantly standing in the corner, just watching things unfold, you've maybe never experienced this, Melissa.
I have no idea. Corner, is there like, you mean like a real corner? Like, I don't even understand what you're saying.
But when you watch people walk in and interact with a room, you can see how their energy sort of changes what's happening in there. So so for me, my first observation is that one. Like, let's observe how a new person who, walks into the house, walks into the conference room, whatever, walks into school, changes the dynamics there.
Yeah.
And then you can kind of start sensing, like, because you're likely part of that, right? How that maybe is affecting your energy.
Well, and you could even go more broad than that. You could, so one of the pieces that I study is the law of attraction with Abraham Hicks. That's something that I've spent a lot of time learning from, and it's a wonderful thing. And in that study, in that focus, they call it changing a segment. They talk whenever anybody comes into a room, it changes the segment, meaning the energy has changed so much that things alter. And if you consider even conversations with your loved ones, you can be in a grocery store, having an exchange with someone, and be energetically affected by that someone. So this is just what we do. We're human beings. We're noticing people's energies and ways of being before anybody even speaks. So I think that it's a much deeper topic. Even we always like to keep things. We always say we want to keep things on the bottom shelf. As we're entering into the self-awareness journey conversations, and get deeper as we go. But this is a topic I think that is so important for us to notice. And what I have found, like even in my own development, what I've noticed is that if I am working with someone, I have to check my energy before I even go in the room. Like, this is what I do now. I check myself. And what I mean by that, like check my energy, what do I mean by that? What I say to myself is, all right, my intention for this exchange, my intention for connecting with this person is to have a dialogue about X, whatever the conversation's supposed to be about, or whatever we're working on in the meeting. And I will say my intention is to stay really centered and to be very objective. And I recognize that there are going to be parts of this conversation that won't make it easy for me to be objective, because I have agendas, I have opinions, but I know that if I'm not objective, my agendas and my opinions will not go over well. If I come in with a strong attitude that says I'm going to be a certain way because I want my opinion to be heard, even if my opinion is the best one in the world, with that energy attached to it, I will not have success. Because people notice, oh, you're trying to push me into thinking the way that you think. And even if I sort of am on the same page with you, I don't like how that feels.
Yeah, well, I like the word you used, intention, like set my intention. I think last podcast we talked about goal setting. Yeah. Right. And in kind of in a broader context, but even these, what would be like a micro goal, like just an intention. My intention is to be like this when I come in. Yeah. Sets you on, the right path.
Yeah. I think too that when people start having an awareness, because here's the natural human reaction is like, oh, I notice that person's energy is whatever, fill in the blank. Something that you don't think is great. They're crabby, they're tired, they're pushy, they are whatever. What usually happens is that we then take offense at it, or we then make it about us, which is taking on their energy. It's as simple as that. Rather than, oh, I'm noticing that this individual is like that, and that's not mine. That's not mine. That's theirs. And I'm going to remain focused on what my energy is, because that's what I have control over, and that's what I'm interested in being supportive and helpful with.
Yeah. I experience, that, and I think actually in another podcast we talked about this idea is that you don't have to take on the energy of someone else.
No.
Right?
And it's very natural to do that.
It is natural. And actually people kind of want you to do that.
Yes, they do. You bet they do.
And the reason they want you to do that is because they want to feel validated.
Exactly.
Right? And
exactly.
And validation and validating, being validated helps you feel more connected with people. So, but it's interesting because you don't have to take on the energy to validate someone's emotional state. Right?
No, that's thinking. Right. That's really an interesting
But it's
thing.
hard to do that. It's hard to actually sort of not get sucked into it or judge it or feel bad about it.
Especially if it's big. Especially if it's a big energy, whatever the energy is. If you're working to have more neutrality and you're working more to just keep yourself in a centered, calmer state, any energy that comes at you that's bigger than yours will be very easy for you to take on and not even notice you are until you're absolutely exhausted.
Yeah. So one interesting thing, we've been talking about energy as it relates to interacting with people. I personally am also really affected by the energy just of my environment, of my physical surroundings. And in fact, I've shared, bits of the story about in my business life, the troubles I had with my ex-business partner and that relationship kind of fallen apart. Well, after we broke our partnership up, we still had, and he left the business.
Yeah.
We still had the office.
Yeah.
that we basically built together.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And that physical space was so hard for me to be in.
Yeah.
Like just walking in the door changed my entire energy.
Yeah.
And so much so that we had to move. It sounds so crazy, but I moved the entire company because I could not be in that, be productive and be my authentic self in that space. Yeah.
Yeah. And even just talking about the energy that's created with the two of you, because it was a really long relationship. And so it was a growing of the relationship, a growing of the office. And so from where you started, it was a very, you were much younger. You were much younger. And this partner of yours had a really strong personality. So I agree with you. What was created over a long period of time made it a certain way. And you were growing through it. And when your partnership ended, it was really because you just became at odds with how he wanted to grow or not grow versus how you wanted to grow or not grow. Just was not in alignment anymore. And neither was the office. It just didn't even fit your personality at all.
Yeah. So I think that, people being mindful of their environment and how that might be affecting them.
Yeah.
Whether they realize it or not,
Yeah. Yeah.
It could be as big as a house or an office or something like that. It could be as little as a particular store, right?
Yeah.
A certain street.
Yeah. No, you walk into certain stores and you can feel really different just based on that. That's so good that you're bringing that to our attention, because I wasn't even really thinking about that, but I think that's really important. And even creating your own certain space, right? How you decorate your space. I have a client that just moved and they just went through a divorce and are moving into a new place. And, I just encouraged the bedroom of that new place, make it completely different, make it something that feels super happy, super light, super, with a lot of growth potential, so that you can feel really happy and energized and build from that. So I think that's really true. You know, the other thing besides that, besides interacting with people and talking about spaces, is also activities.
Yes.
Like, what activities do you find pleasing and satisfying versus what activities are extremely hard and draining for you?
Yep. And so part of it that, is your sort of natural brain wiring, right? I've talked about
yep.
My dominant trait is introversion, and it is so draining for me to be in a big group of people. And I recharge and get energy by being by myself, right?
Yeah,
or being one-on-one with somebody. It's what I have to do. And I didn't realize that for so many years. And it was so frustrating.
One of the markers of a personality trait that is introversion is also being more analytical and technical. So people that are introverted often have the trait of being a lot more analytical. So what that means is activities that are much more detailed, technically oriented, how you learn, wanting to learn more through books or through looking at a screen versus learning in a group environment where there's a lot of interaction. That can be extremely exhausting for people, just being in that kind of environment. So as an introvert with more strong technical bend, anything people related can be more draining. And what's really interesting, though, is even though I am more extroverted, those kinds of analytical tasks and technical tasks that you are extremely good at, I hate. And I'm not good at them. And I can do great work if I sit and make myself. It takes me 10 times longer. I'm tired. I don't like going through spreadsheets. I don't like trying to learn a new technology that has a very small interaction in my life. Like those things, lots of people get jazzed by that, but I feel drained by it. And I always appreciate them very much, but I just singly am not able to feel energized and enthusiastic actually about stuff like that. And the other way that I feel like for my energy, like if I have people around me, even though I have more consistent energy towards people, if they are people that are what I'll say really energetically out of whack, I have to really check myself. And when I say out of whack, I mean people that are kind of like skimming off the top, where they're just interacting. They're not being really aware of how their energy is affecting or affected. And they're just wildly all over the place. I have to really check myself to bring myself in and almost like create sort of a protective barrier or wall so that I don't take that stuff on.
Yeah. So, we've got a variety of different, ways that our energy either gets drained or added to. We flip through these different states like all day long, right?
Right.
And just becoming more aware of where we are at any given time. Like, are we in an energy drain, or are we in a energy add?
Right. And I think, just as sort of bringing this all home, I think what's really important for everyone is to be able to take your own inventory. Like, recognize the people, the places, and the processes, right? Like, look at it like from those three perspectives. How do you feel your energy is when you're in environments or with people or doing things that are very easy for you and very pleasing for you and maybe even soothing for you? And where do you feel that in your body? And how does that make you feel in terms of your energy overall? Do you feel optimistic? Do you feel like energized, like you want to just go do stuff? And then take your inventory on the opposite side, people, places, and processes that you find more challenging, that drain you more. And having that awareness between those two gives you an opportunity to sometimes even plan your day accordingly. You have a lot of control over that kind of thing. You have a lot more control over it than you realize.
You know what we should do?
What?
We should do between now and next week when we record our podcast. Just every night, write down what thing drained, what thing added.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Review it next week.
Oh, that's a really good idea.
That's our accountability partner activity. Maybe everyone else will do it too.
I love it. And then I will also say one last little tip as it relates to energy is people have, like I was saying, you have a lot more control over this than you realize. And choose the things in your day that you have to do that you find more draining. Do those at a time of day when you feel more energetic and get them done. So if you're a morning person and you have to do some stuff you don't really like, do it right away in the morning, and then it doesn't continually drain your energy as you think about it throughout the day.
Yeah, that's a great tip.
Yeah. But let's come back and check on each other next week. I love that idea.
I look forward to your extremely detailed technical spreadsheet about
the post-it note
graphed hourly.
A post-it note with a large marker. We hope that you've enjoyed today's episode. Our mission is to help people become happier and more effective by gaining insight into their own thoughts and feelings. We'd love your support. First, share this podcast with anyone you think might enjoy it. Second, leave us a rating or review on your favorite podcast site. This helps others discover the podcast so we can reach more people. And third, sign up for our newsletter at theselfawarenessjourney.com. This will help us communicate better with you and build our community. Thank you so much for joining us in the Self-Awareness Journey. We'll see you next week.